This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20-A14, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are Christine Hirsch-Putnam, Jesse Warren, Margaret Eldridge, Victoria Walsh, Monty Harris, Navarre Bartz, and is Terry on the call? I can't see any other people, members of our committee on the call.
No, I don't think Terry is on yet. No.
Okay.
And Anne is going to be absent.
Okay.
And Sage, I don't believe was going to make it.
Very good. Okay. The opportunities for the public to access the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County website, on the Board of Supervisors homepage, and on the Albemarle County calendar. Okay, so thank you. I think that helps us with membership attendance of committee members. I'm going to ask that we approve the agenda real quickly, and then we'll get right to Andrea Trimble, who's with us as our guest today from UVA's Sustainability Office, to talk to us about EO77, and big credit to Jesse for arranging for Andrea to be with us. So, and Terry Kent has joined us. So if you, would someone make a motion to approve the agenda?
Oh, I would move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Anyone who has any issue with the agenda? All right, then we'll move right on to Andrea. She can give us about a half an hour for time for questions and answers. She's going to talk to us about EO77. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. And thank you all for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And I'm happy to answer questions afterwards too, if there's anything that you think of later. So I'm Andrea Trimble. I'm director of UVA's Office for Sustainability. I've been at UVA for 8 years now, and working on sustainability in higher education for a total of 15. I was an architect before that, so I've been focused on green buildings and the built environment. So my role now is much more strategic, sort of focused across the university, and to looking at the goals, major strategies, as well as programs and individual projects that we can implement across topic areas. So water, waste, food, carbon, nitrogen, across stakeholders, alumni, students, faculty, staff, community members, and across levels from individual small pilot projects to large strategic plans. So it's a fun job. I really enjoy it. I also am the point of contact for EO77 with the DEQ. So I have some slides. I'll go through them briefly just to give you a sense of where we are with EO77. But we definitely jump in with questions, and I'll try to end to make sure that we have time just to talk and hear about what you want to hear about. So I'll share my screen. All right, can you see that? Okay. Yep. Okay, so I will talk a little bit about our process and how we got a group together in March of this year to get going on our response. I'll talk a bit about how we've addressed phase 1 of the cessation piece for the communication, the training, how we're implementing the challenges we're seeing and our next steps on those. And then I'll talk a little bit about phase 2, which we're just starting to get into, and some of our next steps and what we're seeing there. I know most of you, if not all of you, already know this, but just to make sure we're on the same page around the phases. There's 2 main phases to EO77. Phase 1A, we know includes a cessation as of July 21st of this past year to cease using these items, food service items, plastic bags, and plastic water bottles, and with no exceptions for even recycling them. They had to be taken out. So that was 120 days from when the executive order was put out there. And then just to make sure we're on the same page, phase 1B is the next part. And so this is a 25% reduction by 2022, and then 50, and then 75, and then 100 by 2025. Phase 1B includes the caveat that alternatives can be recyclable. So single-use plastics not on the cessation lists can be used if they can be recycled. And I'll talk more about how we feel about that and how we're approaching that. All this is, we were very happy to see it come out because we had been working on proposing a single-use plastic ban to some extent at UVA because it's critical to our sustainability plan. We have a waste goal in our 2030 plan that is a 70% reduction in our total footprint below 2010 levels by 2030. So this is our hardest goal by far because it's a minimization goal. It's not looking at diversion, it's just shrinking our total footprint and the amount of waste produced. So the single-use plastics are a part of that. All right, so in March, we quickly formed a working group with the major players at UVA who produce, consume, buy plastic. So UVA Dine was a big one. UVA Health was another really big one. And then we had others such as Alumni Association who holds big events on grounds, the bookstore, which sells mostly, they have products, but they also have plastic bags, and then athletics, another big one, particularly in concessions in the venues. And then we included others. So we had about 40 people on this working group, also students and student council, procurement, and others who could help in the decision-making process. So what we did with this working group is we identified all the areas where the cessation items are located, and we looked at where we can sort of holistically, in one swoop, get rid of the plastics by July. And so those big areas tended to be athletics and the health system and dining, where there's sort of mass production and mass feeding of people. And then we continued to build out from there. So we were in a good place because we were building on a lot of zero waste initiatives from the past 10 years or so. We weren't starting from scratch. We quickly also formed a working group with VASHE, which is for us, the Virginia Association for Sustainability in Higher Education. It's essentially sustainability staff from across Virginia at all the higher education institutions. So all the public schools got together and we started having bi-weekly calls and sharing what we were seeing, the challenges we were seeing, what opportunities there were. And so we were able to share and learn from others on the things that UVA had already done and then where we were going. So we worked with all these stakeholders and got them to switch over after their existing inventory is depleted. And so we had this plan in July. We wanted to very quickly get out broad communication to the university. So our executive vice president, JJ Wagner, and then Colette Sheehy, our VP for operations, put out a mass email to the whole university talking about the executive order. So it talked about what the executive order is. It talked about UVA strongly supporting it. And then it's talked a bit about what changes we would see across grounds. It also, at the same time, right after that email, we got wide, at least regional coverage to make sure that we were at least blasting out, okay, this exists, UVA is doing this. There are a lot of pieces that we'll have to figure out along the way, but at least we figured out some big pieces and we're committed to doing this going forward. So with that, we put together our website with FAQs. We covered where this applies. So in general, this is any time UVA funding money is being used, anytime an event is being held on grounds, or anything that's really happening within our buildings as a concession year. So like if a third party comes in and provides a service at UVA, they're also expected to comply. We had town hall, like virtual open houses, several of those throughout the summer. And then we've been compiling resources for stakeholders here. And so that was sort of our broad, hey everyone, this exists. And now we've been funneling down into individuals and departments and making sure that we're capturing everyone who spends UVA dollars or plans UVA events. So every purchaser and every event trainer at UVA got a webinar that they're required to watch that covers these sorts of things. What are the details? How do you find compostable items? How do you go into UVA's platforms, our ordering platforms, and find these things? We also worked on the other side with the platform owners, like Supply Room, where we order all of our office supplies, and had them take out or mark out anything that was a single-use plastic to make it harder for, at least through the UVA platforms, for these things to get ordered. And then we also concurrently started working on our infrastructure, and we have a ways to go on this too. Definitely some challenges on the composting side to make sure that we are reducing contamination to the extent possible, but quickly looked for opportunities, particularly with student council, for a pop-up compost station. So we have one at the amphitheater where all our food trucks are located now. We brought our H2O to go stations back into play. They were out because of COVID, but they were deemed safe to use again. And we just started letting event planners know that we have this H2O to go station. These are the materials you can use. We have bins, reach out to us for bins. We made sure that they knew about the zero waste guide, which we updated slightly, but we had for a while, which outlined for them how to hold a zero waste event. I mean, everywhere from the wares being produced to the diversion and the contamination prevention. And yeah, so we got a lot of it. We still have a ways to go on some of the challenges, and the challenges we sort of knew ahead of time because of this working group. And so we identified those and we asked for extensions on those items. And so garbage bag liners were an extension that all universities in Virginia asked for an extension on, including us, because there just aren't good alternatives. There's compostable bags, but they're going in the landfill. We would have to double them. Just not great options, but we're working through like, where can we use a reusable bag, like with paper recycling, and how can we reduce to the extent possible? And then where are there alternatives? We also, with the garbage bag liners, have been moving towards a centralized waste program at UVA. We're about halfway done with that on the academic side, and that's eliminating individual cans in the offices and putting centralized stations in shared areas. And that will significantly, by millions, reduce the number of small bag liners produced and bought at UVA. Another big challenge is where plastic water bottles in concessions. Concessions in all these areas, there was a lot of existing inventory. We had quantified all of our existing inventory, which you can kind of see on the right here. And then DEQ encouraged everyone to work through those and don't discard of them. So we are still seeing some plastic because of that. But the plastic water bottles in concessions in JPJ and Scott Stadium were a concern that we just couldn't figure out by July. So we asked for an extension until 2022 because there were concerns about the heavier weight of the aluminum and projectiles for large events. But we're working through that, and we have until the end of next year, but we're hoping to figure that out sooner. Another big challenge has been third-party local restaurants and caterers. So we asked for an extension from this on the DEQ and received it, but so we have until December 22, but we are very actively, this is a big area for us with all the meals and lunches and events. We are working on, we're holding training for all the local caterers required through America to Go, which is our ordering platform. So we've held 4 training sessions so far, and we've captured most of the local business owners, but we'll continue to work with them on letting them know what the requirements are and helping them figure out what alternatives are there. Another big challenge for us were vending machines for the water. So we asked for an extension on the vending machines. And that was because our current vending machines couldn't dispense aluminum bottles without being replaced. Our pouring rights contract, which is held by Pepsi, is up next August. And so right now there's an RFP that's about to go out that already includes the requirement for new vending machines. So we're putting in that RFP the requirement for all these single-use plastics, but then also the vending machine requirement that we've got to be able to dispense aluminum out of there. And then moving to existing inventory is our other piece, which I already mentioned. So those are our big next steps, as well as our big challenges. I'd say probably the bag liners and the water bottles are the biggest challenge, but then also just the scale of UVA. There's so many, the purchasing is completely decentralized in a lot of areas. So just making sure everyone knows how to get alternatives, and that we really work on cultural shifts around composting to reduce contamination. That's where we are. So that was phase 1. Phase 2, we submitted our plan to the DEQ in September, and this is where we quantified, to the extent possible, all of our other single-use plastics that aren't either exempt from the rule, which are some of the medical patient care plastics and the research plastics, and aren't in the association. So we pulled together as much as we could. Again, purchasing is really decentralized, but we got as far as we could, at least, and then we'll continue to refine these numbers. But we got about 12 tons of plastic quantified. And so that's the weight of plastic without the material in them. So it's a lot of plastic, which equates to about $4.1 million of purchases. And that's the purchase of the item itself. And so we, in this plan, outlined how we think we can get to 25 and beyond. Really, the plan's looking at the next year. For us, in that I mentioned earlier that phase 1B, the DQ allows plastics to be recycled and sort of be okay to be used. In our mindset, we don't feel that our recycling rates are high enough. We want them to be higher. We want more diversion, and we want to use less plastic. So we included all of those in our plan, that we are committed to reducing all of these plastics, minimizing them and diverting them, and not just sort of putting them to the side because we could. So that's where we are with that. And I'll sort of close with we've gotten a lot of questions about the executive order and whether it might continue and what happens if it doesn't. I mentioned at the beginning that this really aligns with our waste school, and it's a particular interest of the university, I think, to reduce single-use plastic. So we've done it in the sense that we've done the big parts. We know what needs to be done. We just need to continue on and work through these challenges. I don't think we'll back off of the executive order, even if things change in the Commonwealth in terms of it. But yeah, that's all that I've got in terms of slides. I would love to answer questions or clarify or elaborate on anything.
Hi. Andrea, thanks so much. I'm just super curious about what you think is working in terms of the composting with students, like their level of awareness, the contamination, like just that seems like such a big lift. And even having just had an event yesterday, our first in a little while, so woohoo, but 50 people showed up, and I'm sitting there sorting through the trash. This is what I do. When the signage is there. And so, yeah, any new insights, like innovative ideas, just, I'm so curious about that piece.
Yeah, it is really, really tough. I think that there's a few different things. We're doing some training with all the student CIO leaders. So all of the CIOs at UVA and student council. And so we're hoping that at that level, one, when they're planning an event, they can set it up as a zero waste event. And two, they can communicate down into their CIOs. And try to get at it that way. We also started a zero waste ambassadors program. So we have students standing next to bins and talking to people. We just had a meeting with student council a few days ago, and they emphasized that a lot of times it is sort of the closest bin. And so eventually it will be like trying to co-locate everything, but we are still at the point where there's too much contamination to do that. So we, in terms of exterior compost, and Jesse can elaborate on this. And Jesse, if you have anything to add, the amphitheater where the food trucks are is a key area for us and one that students really want. So that's that, and the tents around like Hill. We've, in addition to the signage at key times, have had volunteers out there standing. Same thing with events to the extent possible, the bigger events at least, having someone around to talk to people and help point. But yeah, Jesse, is there anything you want to add on that?
Liz, do you want to shoot?
Yeah, I have a variety of questions, but I'll start with one. First of all, thank you for coming. This has been very interesting. You said that you're working with local restaurants that cater. Are you going to have a list of restaurants that that you're working with when they are finished getting their act together? Because I'm thinking about the county. We have events and catering, smaller events, and it would be really wonderful to have that list.
Yeah, we can definitely share that. All of the restaurants that are in America to Go, our ordering platform, I don't know how many there, I want to say 40 or so, will have to comply. So they, again, they have till December 2022, but there are some now that are quickly catching up. Like we've had some events in facilities management, and at least the 2 caterers that I've seen so far were able to do it and beautifully. And
Right.
so, and there were 2 that we hadn't sort of earmarked as zero waste caterers in the past. So they shifted over quickly. But yeah, we can definitely share the ones that are starting to.
And you said, I think you said in the beginning, I was a couple minutes late. I apologize, but you said that you were working on this prior to the executive order and had been lobbying on the state level. I didn't quite.
No, not lobbying on the state level. We had been sort of focused on zero waste events because we have our waste goal, but then 2 had been pulling together information to advocate within UVA for a single-use plastic ban of some sort, whether it was bottles or bags or something else. This was much more comprehensive than I think we could have gone through in the near term at least.
Okay. And I'd love to see, a lot of the materials that you had on the slides were too small for me to see. I'd love to get that information at some point.
Sure.
Thank you. That's it for the moment.
Monty, you want to go?
Hey, Andrew, thanks for doing this. So I've talked to Jesse Warren a bit, and we've kind of talked about trying to roll out some of this green initiative to these, other restaurants, not just your vendors, but, people in the corner, people elsewhere. And you tell us, the perception I've gotten right now is obviously it's a tough business with COVID. It's always been a tough business, but now it's tougher. And that, they're going to go with the low price option, which is that, terrible styrofoam. And is there any financial benefit, or, I mean, we would like to make it easy for them to say, hey, if you convert to this, here's the vendors, here's everything. I mean, what are your thoughts on that whole concept in general? Is it too early now with all the supply chain issues? Is it something for the future? What do you think about that?
Supply chain issues are definitely a challenge right now. What we have told the vendors, again, through America to Go, is that, and some of them have already had this, but a utensils fee that can be added. So we like this because people can opt out of the fee. Like if they have their own reusables, or if they want to buy their own compostable things, they can opt out of that. But we are allowing all the vendors to add a fee for the utensils that people can opt in or out of when they order. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that was a way of helping the restaurants and say, well, you don't have to recoup this amongst yourself because UVA is needing this. You can charge us.
Do you have a sense for how much more it costs them incrementally on their packaging and everything to go from their cheap, terrible environmental option to meet this protocol?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I could definitely, we have some of that we've talked about them. Yeah, we could figure that out and send it to you, but yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head. I know there are some things that we just haven't been able to find, like the plastic lids that go over the round trays. So like to the extent possible, we've been suggesting like aluminum foil over it, but that's not always possible with depending on what's in there. So for us, we've been telling them your best faith effort. Like we know, unless supply chains are a problem, you can get utensils, but there are like some of these harder to find things for the serving on the serving side.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll put a circle around that because Jesse, I'm not giving up on that one. So we'll keep trying.
Yeah, and all those vendors I mentioned, those are all local outside of UVA vendors through America to Go. So that's like, I don't know, Pearl Islands and Ivy Provision in the corner, and it's all the restaurants that participate in America to Go. And so a lot of those will have had the training or heard the training on UVA side. So it might be a little bit easier to say, well, you've had the UVA training. This is what we're looking for.
And how much, thank you. So, and how much more expensive is it for UVA to meet these protocols than the old ones? And I also ask that in the sense of a new governor. And if it's, way more expensive, that gives somebody a reason to torpedo it. It's kind of a multi-part question because I'm interested in that, but even if he doesn't torpedo, it would be an interesting case study to know how much more did it cost UVA to do this versus what they were doing? So we know that as a benchmark if we try to do that for private schools or somebody who doesn't have to do it.
Yeah, we don't have good number or exact numbers on that. But yeah, if we figure that out, we're happy to share. One thing we've been really trying to emphasize is the minimization piece of all this. So our goal is minimization, like it's that 70% reduction. So if we're buying last bottle of water, we're using the H2O to go station, we're saving money, significant money there. And so instead of jumping to the aluminum bottle option, let's jump to the H2O to go. We're also looking at outdoor refill, like water fountains on grounds, all the opportunities to just fill from the tap. So I think like there may be additional cost on the incremental cost on the compostable material side if we go with the compostable materials, but ideally we're pushing people to bring their bottles, bring their utensils, use less in the first place.
Love it. Thank you.
Hey, so you must have seen a reduction in the volume of trash that's being sent to the landfill, or not?
Well, it's been a little tricky to tell with COVID number. Like we'll have good number. We calculate on the calendar year, so it'll be interesting to see what 2021 looks like. 2020 was tricky. I mean, it went into effect halfway through this year, and then 2020 was just there was a lot produced because of all the to-go items because of COVID. So I think like we should start getting better information on reductions as we ease out of hopefully COVID.
That makes sense. Don't we have state legislation coming down the pike again, if it doesn't get changed by our new governor, but a ban on use of EPS, expanded polystyrene, for food vending, I think, and beverages. I think it's a statewide ban, but it's pending. It wasn't able to go into effect this year, and so we may not see it. But I had a question about, I recently attended a basketball game at JPJ, which was so much fun. And I saw that you're using greenware in the beverage dispensers for the beer and cider. And I wondered, I asked them where I should compost my cup. And they were like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you guys are collecting the trash there and sorting through it for those greenware cups, or not yet, or how that's working.
Not yet. Jesse may want to elaborate on this one. Jesse has been working with athletics to map out their bin locations and collection logistics. Jesse, do you have anything more specific on that one?
I mean, your observation was correct. We do not have yet bins out for the general public and the concourses of JPJ, but we're working on it.
Cool. Thanks, Jesse.
I mean, I will say the executive order helps us because if everything transitions over at once, then we don't have to worry as much about contamination. Right now, we still have that mix of existing inventory and a few extension items. And so once we can get everything over, then it makes it's a little more operationally efficient to get the bins in then. But hopefully that will happen soon and we can get bins in.
I see Christine has a question and Margaret has a question.
So I was just wondering how you're looking forward to deal with the contamination in the compost. Is that something, are you looking towards collecting it all and then sorting it, or really trying to get it sorted, getting the consumer to actually sort it properly by investing in those volunteers or limiting the number of containers? Which I'm wondering which direction you're thinking is going to be the way to go.
Yeah, Jesse, you might want to weigh in on your thoughts on this too. Right now, I don't know that we're planning on staffing to sort internally. So it really right now is on that consumer individual side. I'm really trying to reduce the contamination either at the spot or slightly after in terms of volunteers sorting depending on these books. But right now we don't have plans like we do with recycling. We physically sort everything over on Ivy Road, but yeah, we'll see, I guess, what's needed.
I guess if you can get to the point where everything's compostable,
right? Yeah.
Then it's not going to be an issue anymore, except for the little random bits of trash. And I'm really interested in this idea of allowing the vendors to charge a fee for some of those items the extra items like the utensils. I'm just wondering if that has been implemented and what sort of feedback, if you've gotten any feedback from that, because it seems like a really great
Yeah.
way to go to reduce.
I think some were already doing that. A few were already doing that before this, not necessarily because of compostable. They were just charging a separate fee, which was good because it incentivized people to not ask for it if they didn't need it. I don't know how many have actually done it yet. They were working with the American Eagle people to logistically update their menu that way. But yeah, I don't know how many will opt out of doing that and not bother. But
And just one last thing, I saw that you had a couple, like the zero waste guide. Is that on the your website? So all those documents, maybe you will can share your slideshow, and then be great. These seems like great resources to be able to share if we wanted to help some of our county institutions move in that direction, like our county schools.
sure, yeah, we're happy to share any of that. That's just a PDF. It's on the website, and I can send you the link. And then we are happy to share signage. We just shared signage with another school. Happy to give those original files and have people adapt however they want. Happy to share our training slides too. So we went through with the caterers as well as the purchasers, slightly different presentations, actually very different presentations. And you can have all that too. So anything that's helpful, we're happy to share.
Margaret?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming and talking to us about implementation of the executive order. You know, it's always so encouraging when an executive order like this comes out, but it's also really grounding to hear about the practicality of implementation of it. So, you know, thank you for providing that perspective. I know during your presentation, you emphasized reusables, you know, which is higher in the waste hierarchy. Does the university, is it giving away like a set of reusable silverware and water bottle and those kinds of things to students at the beginning of the year, or are there like concrete steps that the university is taking to encourage the use of reusables?
That's a great question. We've had various programs in the past. And same sort of thing within facilities for staff. I think we're looking at providing facility staff who work outdoors a lot with a reusable water bottle. But yeah, we've had sort of mixed feelings on how much some of those get used and sort of worrying about the waste that's generated when they don't. So I think one of the things we'll think about for next year is, should we bring back, we've had sort of incentive programs around giving, like one year we gave every first year a coffee mug and then incentivize them to use it with discounts and things like that. So I think if we can pair it with an incentive, but we also didn't have, there's certain students who were using all the time, and then we know thousands of those didn't get used ever. So I think we're just trying to balance out how do we make sure it will get used with their incentive. But that's a great question.
And then I also wondered if you know, this is a lot to figure out. Are there other schools that you've learned from, schools who kind of have implemented things like this, you know, with best practices, or who else who we look to learn from?
George Mason, actually just right here in Virginia, has been a really good one. I don't know that there's other statewide bans or individual schools that have banned like plastic bottles or bags. This is one of the bigger, definitely statewide, but even pan-university type bans that there are. George Mason is doing a really impressive job. They have had I don't know the exact name of it, a Mid-Zero Waste Task Force, something along those lines for many years. And so they have all kinds of really comprehensive resources around alternatives and the life cycle assessment of those alternatives. And I've been impressed with what they've been doing.
Well, we've taken up 35 minutes of your time or so, and I know you have other things to do. We're so grateful for your presentation and answering all the questions we threw at you. And best of luck with it. I know it's a daunting task, but it's great to see UVA taking it on and just deciding that they're going to stick with it no matter what, that that's the direction that you want to be moving in.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and appreciate your questions. And definitely feel free to reach out to me. Can I put it in the chat, my email in the chat? Well, I know it doesn't go in the record, or I'll just put in the chat and they could copy it in. Definitely feel free to reach out to me anytime, or Jesse knows how to find me. And happy, yeah, to share resources, follow up, answer questions, just chat about things anytime.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you, Jesse, again, for arranging that for us.
Yeah, I want-
So I think you may know that we have, we expanded our membership in the SWAC to 12 members, and we're now up to 10 because we have 2 members who've been approved. And that's Victoria Walsh, who's with us today, and also Sage Bradburn, who we hope will be with us for the next meeting. And I wanted, Victoria, maybe you would like to just say a few things about your interest in the committee or how you heard about us and what your background.
Sure. I'm actually currently working with a packaging company, which I know is like kind of the tip of the spear right now. Everyone wants zero packaging, but of course packaging is a necessity. But I did just finish working about 7 years with MBDC and the Cradle to Cradle program. And within packaging, that is actually where I'm focusing my attention when I'm at work, is getting everything to be circular, safe then circular. And then with Cradle to Cradle, along with it comes some social justice and carbon in there too. So as you know, a resident of the area, I've also very interested in, you know, where my stuff goes. Like everyone here is, you know, is it going to the right place? Can I, you know, make a difference getting it into the right place, making sure that it's being reused? So basically that was why my interest in joining the group. So it's very happy there was an opportunity to join.
Well, we're really happy to have you be working with us.
Hi, Terry.
And let's see. Okay, so next thing we should probably move right on to is the minutes.
And Peggy, I just want to, if I just interject, I just want to say that really exciting news that Betsy Solsby is, sounds like she is going to put in her application. So really excited that she's going to join us, because
Yes.
Betsy has been a stalwart member, not an official member, but she has been really key and involved in the recycling ambassadors. So I just want to make note of that. So thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy, for getting even more involved with us.
You're welcome.
We're grateful. Okay, so our minutes, we had a couple of one change to the minutes, which Betsy caught. Actually, I wrote the Regency School, but it's the private school is called Regents. So we're making that change. I hope everyone else reviewed the minutes, and unless you have changes you want to see or issues with the minutes, could someone make a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Monty. Someone want to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, so assuming I haven't heard from any members who don't approve the minutes, we'll say.
All in
speak
favor.
out.
Do an all in favor.
Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, looks like all are in favor. Thank you for that suggestion, Liz. Okay. And now we'll just run through the old business and action items. I know that Terry, I don't know if you have any update about preparing a news story about illegal dumping. It's listed on here as pending.
Yeah,
And
no movement on that, though. You know, one idea that I did have is to pair it, to work with Serena at the county, and to pair it with a cleanup. Though, Liz, you'll have to remind me if the last cleanup, if that actually concluded for this fall, which I don't know, but
It did. It did. That was the last one.
okay, thank you. So that's something that I like to sync that. We also, Monday was America Recycles Day, which, but I like to find one of those intersection points so that really can amplify and get more likely to get covered. So
That makes sense. So maybe just start talking about it in the spring when we start doing litter cleanups again.
yeah.
Maybe EJ can, when they have a schedule of them in the spring, she can distribute the schedule. Volunteering EJ to do that if you're still the person, the liaison or whatever, staff person for this committee.
I undoubtedly will be. I also take lead on the litter pickup.
Oh, okay. So
Thank
you're
you,
the
EJ.
perfect person to share that schedule then. Thanks.
Okay, that sounds great. The GBB case studies, we can, when EJ sort of talks to us about the county's report out, we can touch on that. Updating the C3 blog about what happens to curbside items, Christine?
I'm just apologize. I haven't done it, but
Okay.
I'm going to do it. So
I know you
sorry,
will.
Terry. Sorry.
We'll say pending.
Yes.
I think we did update our alternatives around the county for reuse, recycling, and household hazardous waste. And Betsy thought that we might need to look at what Lowe's takes in the way of whether they are receiving the garden pots, the plastic garden pots for recycling.
I was there
And-
today. I went to Lowe's today on another matter. And they said the person there said that they took them. I didn't talk to a manager, and they pointed to a place inside the fence where they take them. But he didn't know what happened to them after that. And then the tube fluorescent lights, they do not take, but I take them up to Ruckersville because they haven't said that they don't take them.
Yeah, I've dropped them off at Ruckersville Lowe's pretty recently, the bulbs. Anyway.
Mhm. But
Actually,
Lowe's
yeah.
does take the light bulbs, right? Just not the long tubes. Betsy? Do you know?
Yeah, sorry. The Charlottesville Lowe's has an interesting sign on the blue container where you put it. It says no fluorescent lights, but they do take the compact fluorescent lights. But I confirmed with the person at the front desk today, they don't take the tubes. And I asked, why does Ruckersville? And he didn't know. So I
Actually
don't know.
took a picture of it because it's the worst example of signage I've seen.
Right. It says no fluorescent lights. Well,
I mean,
good
it's a
grief.
great example of what not to do. So
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'd hate to throw them under the bus, but it is really literally egregious.
So for the next meeting, I'll run down what the Lowe's in Ruckersville and the Lowe's in Charlottesville are doing with fluorescent bulbs, and also about the garden pots. I sent a whole bunch. I sent my husband with a whole big pack of garden pots to Lowe's this week, so I hope they got recycled. But let's chase that down. I'll do that.
Hey, I have a contact in their real estate department who's a friend, and if we want to try to like take this up to them and figure out what their facilities people, what the protocols are, I can help with that.
Thank you, Smani. Okay.
I would love that, because just think about they're just a huge business and it's in the county, and I think it just behooves us. It's such a mixed message and it's hard to keep up with. They need to step up, in my opinion.
Well,
Yeah,
let's figure out the complete like ask we'd have, because we might as well go to them once. And then I'm happy to tap that relationship.
Well, part of it is they answered, even online, they answered it's by the individual stores, which doesn't make sense. If they've got somebody picking up stuff in Ruckersville to recycle these tubes, why wouldn't they be coming to Charlottesville too? But anyway.
Right. Okay. Well, we don't have Ann with us, so we're not going to get an update on the plastic. I'm unsure if it's the Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee or the Plastic Waste Prevention Committee that she serves on, but we'll get the report from her next time. And then it says media alert to promote glass recycling at the county recycling centers. I don't know where we are with that. We can hear more about that in the ops discussion. And then for December, for our guest speaker, I think we're going to have Chuck Regal talking about container deposits instead of having the GFL representative, Jay Zook. Is that right, Christine?
That is correct. And I did reach out to the people at GFL and I did say, you know, we'd really love to have you come in January. So I didn't get a definite on that, but I'm going to keep pressing, and hopefully I now have 2 contacts there. So I'm going to work on getting one or the other to join our meeting in January.
Okay, so it'll be really interesting to hear what Chuck has to say about trying to aggregate glass and ensure that glass containers are recycled, and also if he could give us maybe a status report about container deposits in the state of Virginia and what the chances are of having a program like that.
He might also be able to tell us, I saw on the news the other day that Maine is the first state to charge for the packaging, the producer of the packaging, so that for recycling, I can't remember what the name of it is, but apparently many think that's going to be a movement. But anyway, he may have some, because I know that a lot of European countries charge companies that for the packaging. So that might be an interesting thing to ask about.
These, they call them EPR.
Yes,
These for
EPR.
extended producer responsibility, where in this case, the state of Maine is taking control, but they're of the recycling, but they're making the producers pay for it. And sometimes a state might defer to the producers to take responsibility for recycling it, but not in this case with Maine. Okay, so EJ, since Lance can't be with us today, I'm hoping maybe you can just touch on these things on the agenda that we tell us a little bit more about the litter event at the end of October in Southern Albemarle and the other things outlined there.
Absolutely. First, my apologies. I'm at home this afternoon, so the internet will only allow me to do audio or video. So I'm opting just for the audio. An update on the King Convenience Center. We are in the design phase. It has gone through the Planning Commission. We're on steady state for the design and construction. Having said that, the compactors have a 9-month lead time on those. So it looks like we won't be opening until December of next year of 2022. Also, just FYI, I'm sure you've been keeping track of prices going up. Steel has tripled, equipment prices have doubled. And so we are in the design phase and already over budget simply because of those external circumstances. So we will need to go to the board, back to the board for a supplement ask to get this going. But all in all, we're still on track for this to come together for the southern part of the county. As far as does anyone have any questions about that? Supervisor Price?
Thanks, EJ. Just for the other members, other than the cost increase, the King Convenience Center itself does not have to come back to the board for any approval action. That's already been done. We are anticipating within the next week or so, well, let me take that back. We're anticipating very shortly getting an update from the county executive office on some budget adjustments across the county. So I would anticipate that this will simply be one of the many items that we'll hear about. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification, Supervisor. I appreciate it. Any other questions from the group? The budget cycle is a thing. It's sometimes a complicated thing. All right, as far as the litter pickup events, over the 3 events starting in September, we had over 100 volunteers. We hit, I know, very exciting, Terry, it really was. We picked up over 150, almost 200 bags of litter. We hit sort of the major I would say, problem genres of pollution and litter in our county. So roadway, furniture, we had over 200 pounds of large items that we picked up, including a very big couch on Brook Hill River. We partnered up with RCA. We also had pickup partners with the County Parks and Rec staff, RSWA, and VDOT, because of course, with each of these types of litter, who can pick them up and how they are disposed of, it's different throughout the county. So we were pretty excited to be able to hit those 3 of the 4 quadrants of the county. And then we're looking towards the spring for our largest event, and hoping that stars will align, and the city will be in a position to be able to do partnering work with us. As I'm sure y'all are very well aware, the city is in dire straits with its leadership, and that makes it obviously hard for them to do the business of the city and to be a stable partner for the rest of us. So we look for them to reach equilibrium and be able to partner out for a spring event. But we are looking to do that. Also, just to put into everyone's thoughts, but probably the comms subcommittee the most of all, Serena Gurrier out of the communications office reached out to me today. And with her podcasts that are coming up, she would like to put in 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 evergreen announcements from SWAC. So PSAs that are not time delineated. So to Supervisor Price's earlier, give a hoot, don't pollute. We can't use that one, but something like that that's not connected to a particular event. So put your thinking caps on and send me whatever you have, and then I'll connect the group to Serena so we can get those into the podcast. The podcast doesn't necessarily have to be related to the PSA. We just want to start doing these types of advertisements. And that is all I have. Questions, Peggy?
Yeah, I just had a question. I mean, that's an amazing turnout that you had for the cleanup in Southern Albemarle. Were you able to get any kind of publicity about it? Like, did the news cover it or anything? That's a lot of trash.
We did actually. We did a podcast for that one because it was our final event, sort of our premier event. It was an all-day event at being launched out of the Yancey Community Center. So we did the litter pickup throughout Keene and Esmont in the morning, and in the afternoon we had a community lunch sponsored by one of our food trucks, and then in the evening we had a community outdoor movie, like a drive-in movie. So we did it all for the Halloween event, a little bit more interactive than we were able to do last year. And so CBS was able to put something out. We did the podcast, and then of course our general push in our social media also was able to occur.
That's great. Where do we see the podcast? How could I see that? Or is it recorded?
That should be on our county channel. I can
Okay.
I can send that link out.
Thank you. That'd be great. I'd be very interested in seeing that. I'm sorry I didn't see any publicity about the event.
It's
EJ, do you think that a program done by the county, a podcast to talk about what UVA is doing would be intelligent? I think that would be really wonderful, because there's so many people that have no idea what UVA is actually even doing, and it's inspiring, I think, for the rest of the community to know about it and to know it's even possible.
I think you're absolutely right, Supervisor Palmer. I first heard Andrea speak about their work in a LUPIC, so our Land Use and Environmental Planning Committee, which is a joint entity. For those of on this call who don't know it, it's a joint coordination entity between the city, the county, and UVA. And I was standing in for Lance that day, just as I am today. And I have to say, everyone's jaws on the floor when they talk about what UVA has done. But the truth is, before EO77 came out, UVA was already on this path. And that's one of the reasons that their work is so impressive.
Yeah.
And so I think if nothing, if it's encouraging to see the fulfillment or the compliance with EO77, but for me, the real story is the fact that they started doing this long before it was required. And to see how far you can come in with your own organization or within your own community without anyone else saying you've got to do this is pretty inspiring. So I will connect Serena and Andrea. I'm sure Serena would be delighted to have Andrea on a podcast and see if we can't make that happen through our winter education of the litter pickup pollution. The podcasts are going to be instrumental in sort of gearing us up for the spring event. So that's a great suggestion. I'll put that to Serena. I don't know whose hand is up next, Terry or Christine.
Go ahead, Terry.
Beat you to it. So 2 questions. One, do you guys partner? Would you be interested in partnering with a nonprofit, local nonprofit on that? Like, is there any opportunity for the nonprofit partner to bring volunteers to be on site? So that's my first question. And then my second question is just getting that, I can look for the link, but it might be nice to have, like, I would love to do a post about this. So to get the photo, maybe some photos, and those stats are really great. Is that Serena? Do I reach out to Serena?
Actually, for the pollution stats, it would be AKI Parker, and I will actually do an email introduction.
Okay.
So
Great.
that you can connect with her. And your first question about the partnering, that is one of the things, of course, this first year is a pilot program for this litter pickup. And one of the things that we thought would be true and has borne out to be very true is that our partnerships with nonprofits and other community groups is really the way to go. And that's been really the lesson for as public servants during COVID. It's hard for us, we serve, and so it's hard for us to then turn around to the community we serve and say, hey, can you help us out as well? But it's been one of the really the greatest joys to see during COVID is to see the strength in those partnerships between the county and nonprofits and other community groups. So it's definitely part and parcel of our takeaways from these 3 events is that the more partnering and amplification we can do of other events and they can do of ours, the better off the community is. So that's absolutely on the books.
Christine and Liz.
Oh, yeah, so I just wanted to make a plug. I know I've mentioned this before, but I was just astounded how Louisa County involved their school kids, their high schoolers, and I think they had 150 students. But the thing that I think helped to make it successful is they actually used the school buses and a lot of staff to actually get those kids out there, and the kids' responses were so positive. So it would just be so great. I don't know, if maybe one of them could be scheduled during a teacher work day. I mean, ideally it would be a school day that you could say to the kids, we're going to take you out and do this, but maybe it's on a teacher work day. I don't know. But I know that you've been working with the schools, but I sure would love to see that partnership and getting the kids out, helping with the litter pickup.
Absolutely. Katina Dudley is part of our committee, and what we do on the local government side, because the schools are because they have to plan so far in advance for their work and their extracurricular work and their event work, we are looking really to support them in what they do, and of course then messaging out to them and the rest of the community, hey, come on out for this event. But as far as on school grounds, they've done some really great work on their storm management systems, the trails around some of those areas. They've done some cleanups right before games. That's a really popular, and right after games. And unfortunately, a lot of it either hasn't been advertised or because of COVID has been limited. So I think over the next year or so, as we move into an endemic status with COVID, you'll see those events picking up, and certainly local government is going to be there to support our schools. Supervisor Price, your hand went back up.
No, it's me.
Supervisor Palmer, my apologies.
And you've probably already been thinking about this, but I gotta say it. And I also, so anyway, the list of places that UVA is working with that have eliminated this or almost eliminated the single-use plastic. We need to be doing that on a countywide basis for all our retirement parties and whatnot. And Donna, you've probably already thought about this too, but you have to talk to the clerks on ordering if you guys ever get back into actually having board meetings. Of course, you've been at the board, you've been at the office for all the board meetings because of your internet challenges, but you know, when we get back, when I won't be there next year, but when the board gets back to ordering dinners for all the board meetings, it certainly would be good for the clerks to have that list of places. They're challenged because they need to have them delivered. But anyway, you guys can work it out. But anyway, Jay, do you think that you could get that information to whoever needs to have it so that the county can start using those vendors for parties?
Absolutely. I can put that, I can certainly put the list to Lance and let him work his magic within leadership.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't
All right,
think
the last is the GBB study, which because of my COVID work, unfortunately, and because of the city's shifts and loss of leadership, has the next stage of having discussions with the city and coordinating, especially on the hauler requirements, has had to be put on hold. But we are looking to rev that back up and work with coming back to SWAC with some concepts in probably the early part of 2022, and then to the board with a couple of work sessions towards the second quarter.
Thanks, EJ. That's great. Very good information. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the time. It's already 5 and we're going to run through our working group comments, and then, but I want to make sure we have time at the end to discuss Donna's proposal about adding more amnesty days into the calendar. We all received information about that. So let's keep an eye on the time. And the next group is planning and vision. Navarre and I talked this week, and we were looking at the climate action steps that we can take for the county and in sustainable materials management, and the chapter 13 revisions or metrics, working on metrics is sort of in a holding pattern right now. So we thought we'd like to start working on how can we divert more organics. That's a big push to reduce methane emissions. It's a big push in our climate action plans. And Navarre, did you want to have anything to say about that?
I think the only main thing that we kind of talked about that I know, yeah, you're gonna help. That I was gonna mention is we had talked about, because Lance had talked before about how we did a pilot with the city for street sweeping. That's the word I'm looking for. And we were wondering if we could do something like that with leaf pickup, which I mean probably wouldn't materialize at the earliest, I know, until next year because of our time. We're already kind of in the pickup schedule, but it might be a good time to start kind of evaluating it while leaf pickup is on the front of everyone's mind, I guess.
Right. So we know the most sustainable thing is if people can just rake their leaves off their grass and let them sit. But there are a lot of people in the urban ring who need to get rid of their leaves, and we don't want them to be binned up in plastic bags and taken to the landfill. So Jesse, you had mentioned maybe a meeting or two ago about the fact that you see a lot of urban ring residents putting yard waste in their trash bins because they don't really have an alternative for that. And if we could
True.
do something like this with leaves as a start, I don't know how much it costs. I would like to find out if Panorama pays anything for the leaves that are brought by the city. I don't know if anyone here knows about that. Lance would know, I think, but we can find out details. Does the city just deliver all those leaves to Panorama just as a free disposal resource, or does Panorama give anything for those leaves that they then, compost and sell? Anyway, that's what where Nuvar and I are thinking of going next with planning and vision. And that's all I'll say right now so that we can move on to the ops group. Jesse?
Hey, Peggy. So I'm going to look around the room for a couple of updates. First one is glass in Nelson County. I haven't heard anything lately, but maybe Phil's heard something.
I have not heard anything.
I haven't either.
But I just talked today after talking with you, Monty, talked to Strategic Materials, and they are interested in at least being part of solutions. So there's a chance, though not a it doesn't sound like they're going to swoop in and buy cans for Nelson County, but it's possible they could help co-fund new cans for Nelson County. So they'd like to be at whatever table we kind of develop to talk about glass.
Okay. I don't know. We left the ball in the court of they'll get back to us. Is there anything we need to do to prod them?
I haven't prodded them because we didn't have our ducks in a row. We've had a couple of virtual meetings with OI, used to be Owens, Illinois. The bottom line we figured out at this point is they've got a charitable foundation that they can tap to give donations in reciprocity for the glass to a pretty meaningful tune. They like to give it to, help me, Phil, United Way, right?
Yeah, and it was their United Way, I think, or it was United Way, but wasn't it something, it wasn't necessarily the United Way locally. Wasn't there something?
I got the impression it was a local United Way.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. So, that's no direct benefit to Phil, but, if we can get some money to the community, great. Because we told them Phil can't, by the way they're set up, they can't receive donation. I mean, they could receive a donation, but they can't then say it's a donation. So it wouldn't, I don't know if accounting would allow OI to still record it as a donation if it worked that way, but we haven't really asked that direct question, but they've said their preference is to give it to a charitable organization that helps the community. And then we were talking to a senior guy who's their VP of sustainability. He put us in touch with his direct report who's in charge of growing this for Virginia. And so we had a call just with him. And when Phil mentioned that we've got to go through a procurement process, he basically just looked for no. He was like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And he made it way heavier than it needed to be. And he basically said, let me go talk to our procurement people and report back. And I just felt he was a fairly low level guy, and the way he could frame it would essentially kill the deal. So I've been on top of his boss to reconnect, who finally, after 3 weeks, I thought he might take a restraining order out on me. I was professional, but anyway, we've got a call next Tuesday, and I just want to frame it to him to basically say, it's not the biggest deal in the world. This isn't something that has to go out every year. And then for him to hopefully present their procurement the right way and we can get a yes. And then Phil can, and the rest of the team can review apples to apples. What has OI given us? If strategic materials sharpens their pencil, what does that look like? And if we can start getting, you know, Nelson County, Greene, all these other counties to start pitching in, what does that look like?
Great, thank you, Monty. If Peggy, please help me out if there's any hands raised. But if there's no questions on that, we can move over to school composting.
Yeah.
And Monty, do you want to give the update on that too?
They selected Black Bear, and our understanding is it's being rolled out right now for all the back of the house, which is the cafeteria staff. Terry created a cool poster for the cafeteria staff of why you compost, and you know, made it really easy. They intend to put it up by the compost bins. Christine was at a school today or yesterday and saw that there weren't, I think, Christine, you didn't see the compost bin. So we may want to go back to Lindsay with some questions, but I'd want to go back to her with any questions we had all at once, ideally.
Do you mind if I just chime in for a second? I was at Greer and I was there today, and we just happened, the Master Gardeners are doing this whole series of programs for the first and the third graders. It just so happened today, our whole program was on composting, and we actually talk to the teachers and work with them. I mean, they're using these great compostable trays for their lunch program. But I talked to several of the teachers. I'm like, you know, do you know that anything is available for you? There should be something. And they just have no idea about that. So, but I do want to say that I think that there is a possibility of tapping into the Master Gardeners to actually, when the point comes, as volunteers to come into the schools and help with some of that education, that there's an interest there. But it was really great because you're getting the kids on board. We were able to do these great lessons. And so you can kind of see what can happen. And just as an aside, I peeked into there were 5 recycling bins on the outside there, and I was there for 2 days, and I peeked in, and they were pretty much empty, and they remained empty over the course of those 2 days. So I'm not really sure I don't know what that means, but when I have been by there peeking in, it doesn't look like they're being utilized much. So just
Christine,
throwing that out there.
maybe you, Terry, and I communicate on our side and figure out what the ask is with Lindsay, because she was definitely wanted to control the communication with the principals. We kind of offered to help with that, and that didn't seem to be welcome not in a bad way, but it just was pretty clear she didn't want to mix message. And maybe we can get an update on that and see how can we help.
Margaret?
Christine, when you were there, did you notice, were they using compostable cutlery and, you know, other things? And because that's going to be a huge challenge in the schools if they just have, you know, 1 or 2 compostable things, because you're just setting yourself up for contamination nightmares.
Yeah, you know, I just saw what the teachers brought out to us, and the teachers saying we're eating in our classroom. So yeah, I don't know about that. I imagine that they're probably not, but you know, seeing the trays, and I think really educating the teachers, like there could be an opening there, but you definitely need that monitoring to happen with the teachers. But I'm going to reach out to Eric with Black Bear, and maybe that's one way of kind of finding out where the bins delivered, and you can at least maybe start there.
And Margaret, it's back of the house right now, which they were very clear about, which is the cafeteria staff. So because the kids will get the utensils, right? So I would think that wouldn't make it in as it's set up right now, because with all of COVID, they don't want the kids in a line doing all this stuff, and kids are eating all over the place. So we kind of looked at this as kind of a phase 1. We got a beachhead, we're in the door. And as hopefully COVID concern passes, we can do it more that way. But your point still well taken. If any of it gets in there, it could be contaminating it.
Well, and I guess just front, I was assuming Christine was talking about front of house when she was talking about trays. I figured those were the actual lunch trays the kids
yeah.
were eating their food on. So that's what I was referencing. Because you're right. I mean, back of house is super effective and kind of the low hanging fruit with with diverting food waste. So it's great that that's happening.
Yeah, I was just thinking, since we just did that program, I wanted to say to the teachers, if you want to continue to collect that little bin of compost from your classroom and take it to the kitchen, but I don't know what's in the kitchen, so we got to find that out.
And as a C3 volunteer, Christine and Terry and I are working on a lot of the private schools kind of one by one. And we'd like to put that together. And then and I can't remember if we told you all this, but the contract was written with whatever the terminology is, that there's a rider that essentially other people can just ride on the contract. So if it's a one-off private school, Black Bear would have to agree, because I'd assume, Albemarle County got competitive pricing that maybe they wouldn't just offer a one-off, but that's an attractive feature. And ultimately we'd like to talk to Charlottesville about this, but I think we've held off just given the state of the union there.
Got it.
Okay. Jesse, do you want to
So-
suggest a meeting time? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Quick update from Cherise. So she told us last time she's going to be working on the solid waste management plan, or is proposing to her leadership that she works in the solid waste management plan update for the entirety of the 5 years, instead of just trying to get it all done in the last one, which I think makes sense to sort of chip away at it. It's not clear that Cherise will continue to be our solid waste representative, but she's optimistic that her or whoever it is will do a great job. And that said, how about noon on Friday, December 3rd for a meeting at the county office building, picnic tables? I've already lost. All right, Monty's in. Victoria, if you'd like to join, our door is always open to you. Okay, so what we do is we meet at the picnic tables in front of the county office building on McIntyre at noon on December 3rd. I'll send out an invite and we'll post the meeting.
Great, thank you. And Christine, you want to move right into the outreach and education?
Yeah, thank you. So the first thing that I want to just say is thank you to Betsy, because we decided it'd be nice to spruce up the McIntyre Recycling Center a little bit. So we went through and just picked up little bits of trash, but Betsy brought her weed eater a couple weekends in a row and just went along that fence line, and there's some vines kind of covering up some of the signs. So we did a little bit of a spruce up. We got up underneath the mixed metal and cleaned up a lot of the cans fall through there. It gets to be a real mess. And Phil, I think we were talking to Kiera about that when they do change out those bins. She didn't think that they were actually picking up the cans that were up underneath there, but anyhow, we just thought it would be a good idea to do what we can while we're there to keep things spruced up, especially given that we're talking about putting a new convenience center in southern Albemarle. And Betsy's got some great ideas that, Phil, I want to reach out to you, and we thought we would just meet with you because we're like 8 months now with this recycling ambassador program, and just to share with you what we've learned and our observations. So we want to do that with you.
Appreciate it.
And then I did join the Yancey cleanup in southern Albemarle, and I just had I ended up spending my time with another community member down there. And one of the things that she brought up is she just felt like there needed to be more education about recycling in that community. And so she thought it would be a good idea to perhaps give our presentation that we've done. But I just want to mention to EJ, and when we're thinking about that budget for the Southern Southern Convenience Center, really thinking about having some money for outreach and education to the community so that people are understanding the do's and don'ts of recycling, and that people are aware that this this facility is going to be available to them. And so I just want to convey that feedback that I got from the community member there. And the last thing is that, Margaret, thank you for helping to organize this Trex field trip. December doesn't seem like it's going to work. I did try to send out a straw poll, but it was at the wrong time because it was right during the election. So everybody probably thought it was another piece of election spam rather. So I'm thinking perhaps January. And so Margaret, if you can give me a couple dates in January that you think would work for you, a Friday or Thursday afternoon works for Betsy. And I'm not sure who else would be interested in going. It really will take all afternoon because it's a couple of hours there and back.
So Christine, I was thinking maybe we could try to do like a 10:30 tour, you know, and we could tour for an hour or whatever and have lunch. I'm from Winchester, so I actually know Winchester pretty well. There's a nice pho restaurant close by where, you know, we could have lunch and then get back on the road before too late on Friday afternoon. So I don't know if that timing sounds good. My contact at Trex had asked that we propose a couple of dates that work for us. So I wondered if maybe we could find 2 Fridays in January that might work for the majority of the group. And then I can share those 2 dates with Trex and see if they work for them.
So if we wanted to go for like the last 2 Fridays in January, if that works for you, Margaret, and then I can go ahead and do another poll.
I am looking at my calendar. I will be at the USCC conference on the 27th. No, that's the 28th. Yeah, the 28th won't work. I'll be out all that week at a conference. The 21st would work for me, as with the 14th.
Okay, well, we can shoot for those, and then how about the first Friday in February if we're going to pick 3 dates?
Yep, I can make that work too.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and I think that's all I have to report. And
may I ask a quick question, Christine? Just
Yeah.
when you're talking about giving a presentation down in the Yancey Esmont area, I'm assuming you talked to Ed Brooks and you know that he has the Zoom meeting on Friday afternoons. So I just wanted to make sure that was a good place to start anyway.
Yeah, that was going to be the next step is seeing what I can coordinate with him. It sounds like there is interest in at least the person that I spoke with. She thought it would be a great idea.
Yeah. Ed was a big proponent of this convenience center back in 2014. So I know he's happy about it.
Thank you.
Do you want to suggest a meeting, Christine? A meeting time or?
I think that it's been a little bit challenging for us because we were meeting at the county office building at a time when Anne could join us, which was after 5. And so that just, it's going to be dark now. So I'm not sure how to move forward with that one.
Okay, you can powwow with Anne and Margaret.
Yeah. We'll try to see what we can put together with our group.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you especially Betsy and Christine for doing 8 months of ambassadorship at McIntyre. I think it does make a difference. And I know you put a lot of time into it and we're all grateful for that. I want to be sure it's already getting near our time of our end of our meeting, but I would like to have Donna talk to us about her proposal for adding amnesty days and what spurred that, and go right ahead.
Actually, it was kind of a simple thing. I have a UV light for my water treatment system that has to be replaced every year, and it's full of chemicals. And so I called over to Phil or someone over there and just checked on the proper way to dispose of it, and had just missed by a week or so that amnesty day. And it just it caused me, I've been thinking about this for a while anyway, just to look more into the schedule of it. And then I just asked county staff and got some real good information back. And the main driver is cost. It costs quite a bit of money to hold these days, but and I don't have the exact schedule. Liz or Phil probably can be a little more accurate on it, but some of them are once a year, some are twice a year, as I recall. And some of the ones that I have been able to participate in, once the word comes out, you got to sign up quick. These are like getting tickets to a rock concert. I mean, if you don't sign up quick, they sell out, and you're out of luck. And some people do not have the space to store things for 6 months or a year till the next time it comes around. And we did see a good report recently about the hundreds of thousands of gallons of paint that we are able to recycle easier. But my initial request to county staff was, why don't we do more of these? Is there a way that we can do it? And it really just comes down to cost. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's something.
And I'm sorry, since we're almost at the end, I'm just going to throw something in really quick. The Ravenna Solid Waste Authority has discussed this multiple times over the years about adding additional times. And I think it would be really, really great for even Donna to sit down and just talk with Phil a little bit, or maybe since I'm the representative on the solid waste, the three of us could do that. And he could give you some of the other issues. Of course, you can do anything if you've got the money. But some of the issues with, the many weekends that Ravenna already is doing these, given the number of them, and the different issues associated with the different kinds of amnesty days. Like there's issues with tires that, we really don't have with sofas and furniture and whatnot. So I think that'd be really, really good to hear that, Donna.
No,
and
I agree.
Maybe a report back to the committee when we have that information.
Yeah, I agree. And really, all I wanted to do was to bring it up and find out how much interest support from the committee there is. And if there really is, then we start raising our voices to try and move towards what else is possible. But, as Jeff Richardson, our county executive, often has been quoted as saying, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And it comes down to prioritizing. And as Liz just mentioned, also that prioritizing also includes personnel costs and time that people have to put in on the weekends, because it's a lot of people for one of those amnesty days, not just to organize it, but then to actually run it. So.
And they have to look at their overtime and how much they're asking people to do overtime. So,
Yeah.
And Phil knows all this. So maybe that's the best way, is to have a conversation with Phil and then bring that back to the committee. I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, so I'll try and get connected with Phil, take what information we've got.
I think that sounds like a great idea. I'm sorry we've run out of time to discuss it more, but I think it sounds really ideal if you, Liz, and Donna and Phil can get together. Also, I know Terry had some questions. I think they were mostly answered by Phil, but it's a shame she's couldn't be part of the discussion. So why don't we put that on as an action item that you guys will meet and discuss further, and we can pick it up in December.
Okay. Looks like Betsy has a question.
Yeah, I just want to say, from the many years I've been going to the amnesty, we used to have long lines. In the past couple ones, there haven't been long lines, so I'm not exactly sure why that is. But I mean, we were out on the main road lined up, especially for hazardous waste, and it hasn't been that busy.
It's paint. We took paint out and.
That's
allowed
what I
people to-
figured, because that was what so many people were bringing. So, and just as another aside, my office, again, will be doing electronics recycling, which we've been doing about 3 times a year. So it's an alternative. The e-waste with Albemarle, you do have to get on a waiting list. All the other things you can just drive up for.
And a lot of people don't show for that, unfortunately.
Right. Well, we're doing it, and we take, anybody can bring it. The next one's February 18th from 7:15 to noon, if you'd like.
That's great, Betsy. Thank you. I've used that service. I mean, Phil's program is wonderful too, but they really don't want to take things like toasters, broken toasters and irons and things like that, which Betsy's program will take. So, okay, guys, it's 5:32. I think we should wrap up unless anyone would like to add anything before we go. I should say that I talked to Teddy recently, and she had a request she would like the SWAC to consider, and I will make sure we have time to discuss that in our December meeting. All right. Should we sign off then? All right. See you in a month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank-
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.